Hey everyone, you may be wondering, is Bitcoin still a good investment? Which you, of course, could be forgiven for asking the question because Bitcoin has been mostly trading sideways for the past 5 or so months between mostly $55,000 per coin and $70,000 per coin. Okay, so I'm going to make an attempt to answer, is Bitcoin still a good investment? Obviously, I think yes. I'll explain why. Okay, so first of all, you've got to zoom out. The answer to all of these things is always zoom out. So if you take the most transformational technologies of all time, let's say the automobile, the internal combustion engine, the internet, electricity, all of those things. If you take all of those things over time, and then you zoom in to any 6 months or 12 months or anything, you can find periods of time where it looked like the adoption of that technology was not actually going to happen. So if you go look in the early days of, the Model T Ford with Ford, I haven't done this, but I know this is the case for sort of just macro investing. If you zoom in on Amazon or Apple or Google or Microsoft or any of the magnificent 7 stocks, which are the 7 highest performing stocks in recent years. Anyway, if you zoom in on any of those or the major technological changes over time, you will see exactly the sort of thing you see in Bitcoin right now. So let's go back to let's say the automobile, just to pick a random example. So the internal combustion engine is invented, automobiles come around, but no technology is adopted uniformly. With any technology, you end up with early adopters that jump on board quickly. Then there's sort of a lag where people are trying to figure out, hey, is this real? And it takes time for the next wave of people. And people tend to adopt technologies in waves, right? It's not this linear thing. So let's assume you had, invested heavily in the automobile. And for 5 or 6 months, the sales of automobiles, let's call it the Model T Ford or whatever, let's just assume that those are sort of going sideways. So that may lead you to question your thesis, which is, hey, maybe people are not actually going to adopt automobiles. Maybe we're just going to stick with the horse and buggy indefinitely. Okay, so what do you do in that situation? Well, the thing you don't do is just go look at the price or go look at automobile sales. Because if you zoom in on any of that, it's not going to tell you what is going to happen long term. Because again, if you go to any of the highest performing assets or most transformational technologies of all time, and you zoom in, you can find 6 months or 12 months or 18 months at a time where it looks like Apple, the company, is not going to make it. Or it looks like maybe the internet will never be adopted or whatever. Let's go back to the automobile. So the best thing to do is to go back to just first principles, which is, okay, you're heavily invested in automobiles. It's the early 1900s, and you're concerned that because, adoption of automobiles have temporarily stagnated, that maybe your investment is a bad one because maybe the world is not going to use automobiles. Okay, again, if all you do is just look at the automobile sales numbers, that can be misleading because you can get a flat line or something which is called range bound, which is, it's bouncing around between 5,000 and, 5,500 and 7,000 automobiles sold a month. And maybe it gets stuck there for like 6 months, just like the price of Bitcoin seems mostly between, at a zero, mostly between, 55,000 and 70,000. So you can get sort of stuck there for, potentially extended periods of time. So if you look at that, you could conclude, hey, maybe we're just not going to adopt automobiles. So the right thing to do is to look at the underlying asset to say, okay, what does an automobile do? People are using horses and buggies and automobiles for transportation. Now, is an automobile a better means of transportation than a horse and buggy? And you just go one by one and just say, okay, can it go faster or will it eventually go faster? Yes. Does it require all the maintenance and upkeep, of the care and feeding of physical live animals? The answer is no. Does it this? Does it that? You go through the top 5 or 10 attributes that make for a great means of transportation, and you would quickly conclude that automobiles are better than horses and buggies. They just are. Which means you could conclude, okay, that means eventually the, sale of automobiles will kick back in and people will buy and, move over to automobiles. Again, same with electricity. If you had 6 months where the adoption of electricity instead of kerosene was just sort of, the adoption seemed to be stagnated, you'd sit back and you'd say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's think about this. Is electricity and the electric light bulb better than a kerosene lamp? Yes. It doesn't make smoke. It does not, it has the ability to glow brighter. You go through all the attributes for why somebody might use electricity rather than kerosene for lighting or heating or whatever it is. And you would conclude that, yeah, maybe we seem sort of stuck in the adoption of electricity, but electricity is going to get adopted because it's fundamentally better. So same is true for the printing press. Same is true for, anything. Is you can go to the fundamentals. So what does someone like me do when the price of Bitcoin has been mostly in the same range for 5 months? Well, first thing I do is I go look at the historical price of Bitcoin and realize that this has happened a bunch of times before, that it is totally normal for the price to get, stuck in a range for, 6 or 12 months, or even to go down for, 6 or 12 months. And that does not mean Bitcoin's broken. It means that in the natural adoption cycle of any technology, and again, you go back and look at the Magnificent Seven stocks and look at the first, 16 years, since Bitcoin is 16 years old. Go look at the, Magnificent Seven stocks in the first 16 years of their lives, and you can zoom in and you can find periods where they're sideways for 6 months in their stock price, or they go down for 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. It just happens. It's even with technologies and companies that ultimately are transformative. If you zoom in, you can find periods of time where they're behaving just like Bitcoin is behaving today. And it does not mean anything's wrong with that company or technology or with Bitcoin. It just means that temporarily, market adoption is what it is. And there's a lot of dynamics in play for reasons people would adopt automobiles, reasons they would adopt electricity, reasons they would adopt the internet and all that sort of stuff. And that's just totally normal. So as it relates to Bitcoin, if the price seems stuck, I go back to, okay, let's go to the most fundamental questions we can ask about Bitcoin. What are the most fundamental questions? One, is the concept of money a technology that is valuable to humans? Yes, it is. Okay, we're not going to go back to barter. So yes, money is valuable. Okay, number two, do I believe politicians are going to suddenly be super responsible and that fiat currencies are going to stop losing value every year? No, I served for 8 years in the House of Representatives. I've been in and around politics for, the better part of 2 decades. Nothing inside me believes politicians are going to suddenly be responsible with money, and nothing about human history would lead anyone to conclude, all the way back to Roman ducats and all this sort of stuff, nobody would ever conclude that a currency that can be debased by humans will not be debased by humans. So if something starts out 100% gold coin, then it goes to 95, 90%, 70%, 65%, 52%, like they're just going to dilute it. Like if humans can mess with the money, they will mess with the money. And so, okay, so money is a valuable technology. We're not going to stop using money. Politicians are not going to be responsible. We're not going back to gold. Again, I've done enough work to feel confident that I know we're not going to go back to gold as the money that we use as a nation. One, it already got taken away between 1933 and 1976. All of the gold that could be used as money was confiscated by the federal government of the United States. So, one, it's not going to work as money because it already got taken away one time, and if they took it away once, they can take it away again. Second, which they can't with Bitcoin. Second, gold is not divisible. It doesn't have the monetary properties that Bitcoin has as far as divisibility, authenticatability, the ability to send it over time and space. And gold is, they're digging about 2% more gold out of the ground every year, which means every 36 years, the total amount of gold in circulation doubles. Well, as population growth starts to fall off, which it is, expectations are somewhere between 9 billion and 10 billion people in the world. Population growth will go sideways and there will not be population growth. But the total amount of gold in the world getting dug out of the ground is going to keep going up, 2% a year. So just on the fundamentals of its monetary properties, Bitcoin is better than gold. So we're not going to stop using money as a technology. Politicians are not going to start being responsible. We're not going back to gold, which means we are going to use some form of money that works and cannot be debased. And Bitcoin obviously is I believe, that money. So I go through the fundamentals of, okay, is Bitcoin durable? Is it divisible? Is it authenticatable? Does it have every single element of what a perfect monetary system would have in the world? And the answer is yes. Can I buy stuff with Bitcoin? Yes. With the Bitcoin Coinbase debit card, I can go buy anything with a debit card. And for larger purchases, I can use the actual just Bitcoin network. So, recently, I guess it was earlier this week or late last week, I was paying somebody and they sent me a Bitcoin invoice, and I, pasted it over into a Bitcoin wallet, and it said, hey, do you want to pay this person, this amount of money? And I clicked yes, and it said done, and it was done, and it was amazing. And we did not have to worry about, whether we were on Venmo or PayPal or Zelle or any of the different apps. We didn't have to be on the same app. We didn't have to interact with anyone that could freeze accounts, suspend accounts, require authentication. It's just, hey, I can transmit value as easily as I can send an email to anyone in the world. As easy as I can send an email, I can transmit value with Bitcoin, and it works incredibly well, and it's just amazing technology. So every time I use Bitcoin, like native Bitcoin, I'm like, this is just amazing technology. Again, similar to you flip a switch and a light bulb turns on, or you get in a Model T Ford and you drive around and you think, I really, really, really think everybody's going to use this instead of a horse and buggy. Like, maybe temporarily they're sort of not, but when you experience the technology yourself and you're like, I'm just really, really, really certain that this is the future. And that's how I feel about Bitcoin. Every time I use Bitcoin, I'm like, there's just no possible way this is not the future monetary system of the world. It checks every box. So again, I don't look at any investment as it's a good investment because the number's going up. In fact, often, investments that people buy only because the numbers are going up, but they don't actually understand, the underlying technology, ends up being an investment where the number ultimately goes down. So I don't buy things because I think the numbers, is going up. I buy things because I think they have an incredibly high underlying fundamental value, and that underlying fundamental value will eventually be represented in their price. That may be represented in the price today. It may be represented in the price in the future, but it always eventually gets represented in the price. So eventually people did adopt automobiles, and eventually the automobile companies that were successful in the automobile marketplace made money. Eventually people adopted electricity, and the companies that were built on the adoption of electricity made a lot of people a lot of money. Eventually people did adopt the internet, and that made a lot of people a lot of money. So the same is true on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's fundamentals are the most solid investment of anything I've ever owned. And every time I use it, I research it, which is constantly. I spend, hours every single day reading about, researching, and following Bitcoin, Bitcoin news, Bitcoin research, Bitcoin, technological developments. And every aspect of that leads me to conclude the same thing, which is the underlying investment is rock solid because of the fundamentals. And if the fundamentals are solid, then does it really matter that the price has been mostly sideways for the last 5 months? And the answer is no. I mean, I would love it to be higher because then everything I buy with my Coinbase debit card's even cheaper as compared to the price I paid for the original Bitcoin. But you know what? I'm always buying more Bitcoin too. So I've got direct deposit, all of my income streams, direct deposit to Coinbase and are auto converted into Bitcoin. So if the price is cheap one day, well, guess what? If I get a, direct deposit that day, I'm buying cheaper Bitcoin. So let me recap here. The recap is money's an important technology. Politicians are not going to solve that problem. We're not going back to gold. We are going to use a digital hard money in the future. Nothing is going to replace Bitcoin for all of the things I've covered in previous videos about, if you try to improve on Bitcoin in some way, you have to make it worse in some other way. And Bitcoin chose to be the most secure, the most decentralized digital asset. And for the base layer of the monetary system, those are characteristics that cannot be improved upon without making a sacrifice that people are unwilling to make. So for all those reasons, I think Bitcoin is a fantastic investment. As with the previous video and every video I ever do, this is not investment advice or accounting advice or legal advice. This is just my personal opinion. And anyway, but I think Bitcoin is a fantastic investment at $57,000 per coin. And frankly, I think it's a fantastic investment at any price under $75,000 per coin. And since the price has never been above $75,000 per coin, I don't believe there's been any time in the last 16 years where Bitcoin was not a great investment. So happy to answer any questions. My conviction of Bitcoin remains at 100 out of 100. All the news headlines are positive with regard to Bitcoin, and it is only a matter of time until that is reflected in the price of Bitcoin, at which point everyone will wish they had bought a whole lot more, which is what always happens as the price goes up. Everyone wishes they had bought more, and that has been the consistent theme for the last 16 years. So hopefully it all helps. I'm here for anything you need as always. Thanks and have a great day.